I'm Peter Spyns from the Flemish Department of Work, Economy, Science, Innovation and Social Economy, and I'm the coordinator of international R&I policies for the department. Before I start, I'd like to recommend that you'll also listen to the recording of my European colleague Sergey, and as usual, I agree with him on many matters. I will not repeat his words, but I will come in from a more analytical angle. More details can be found in a reflection paper on the future of the era dating from a few years ago and available at the website of my department under the title Reflections on a Vision for a Future European Knowledge Area. Okay, so what is, in my opinion, the fifth freedom about? It's about the free circulation of knowledge in the European Union in a kind of single European knowledge market. That market, between quotes, is called the European Research and Innovation Area, the ERA in short. So the ERA is the context, the framework, the government structure, etc., that make the fifth freedom a reality. Now, knowledge. Knowledge can take several shapes. It can be inside of the mind of a person who has learned or acquired knowledge. It can be codified or embedded. And you can think of scientific papers or patents or descriptions of standards, but also artifacts such as an algorithm, for instance, or a battery, a light bulb, or I don't know, a savings product. In many cases, artifacts are protected by intellectual property rights in order to safeguard the rights on the knowledge to construct the artifact. And thirdly, it can be a collective, I would say, body of knowledge inside an organization. Now, from another perspective, you have the four elements of the quadruple helix. You have government administration, you have, of course, academia and research centers, and you also have companies and what are called civil society organizations. All four of them handle some form of knowledge in some ways, and they produce, diffuse, absorb, and apply knowledge. Now, these three angles, you can use them and represent the situation in a three-dimensional matrix or a cube. And what you could do is you could examine the cells of the cube and see, for instance, on the intersection of the three axes, for instance, you could identify how knowledgeable persons in academia disseminate knowledge. And then you can see which actions or initiatives are needed to stimulate this, or which gaps or barriers still exist that should be removed or solved. What can lead to initiatives such as, for instance, to stimulate research mobility. And you can have dedicated funding or, for instance, the existing European pension plans such as WeSaver to stimulate academic mobility across countries in Europe. So you can think of many more facets inside the cell of such a knowledge cube. Even if you continue the example of research mobility, there's a researcher who can move from one country to another, or, especially in big countries, from one research group to another research group in the same country. So you can analyze all the cells of the cube, and you could try to cover as many aspects as possible that all relate to the implementation of the fifth freedom. So we have an intellectual framework to analyze the situation. And as Sergey already rightfully stated, in order to make the fifth freedom happen, you of course need to build on the four others, being the freedom of circulation of persons, goods and services, and capital. It's quite easy to see that there is, for instance, no freedom for persons to circulate. So if that freedom is not there, then of course researcher mobility is seriously hampered, to stay within the same example. Now, if you have examined all the cells of this, what I call the knowledge cube, you can decide on priorities for actions and initiatives, and you could start to draft a policy plan. In this case, and that's already there, you can have an ERA policy agenda with several ERA actions or longer-lasting structural policies. By the way, a new version of the ERA policy plan is now under debate, and new actions will be adopted soon. The policy plan does contain actions on researcher mobility and knowledge valorization and so on. These actions or these priorities are quite obvious ones. But there also exist others, less visible initiatives as well. An example is that the mutual learning exercises facilitated by the Policy Support Facility of the European Commission, and they are meant to exchange good practices between civil servants. So clearly this is an example of free circulation of knowledge within governments across countries. So that's also a way of circulating knowledge. As a last thought, I'd like to mention that the current government structure of the ERA and the process of the Commission co-creating together with the member states an ERA policy agenda with ERA actions and everything around it, and this whole process and these structures, it might be worthwhile to be included in the upcoming ERA Act so that they have a solid legal foundation for the ERA, and that these processes are already based on legislative procedures, so they should be respected in the future.